Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com. Today we're going to make a brownie tart, and this is what it looks like. I think of this as like a dressed up brownie. It's buttery rich with a really deep chocolate flavor, and the texture is creamy and smooth, almost fudge-like. Really good on its own, or you could serve it like I have here with some whipped cream, or even a scoop of vanilla ice cream. It's really good. So the first thing that you will need to do is to preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 180 degrees Celsius. Now, this is a brownie tart, so you can you will need a 9-inch, 23-centimeter tart pan with a removable bottom. But you know, a lot of people don't have a tart pan, and I know that, so you can also use a 9-inch, 23-centimeter springform pan. Actually, that's what I'll use today to show you that you could use either one. So just clamp that down, and then I'm going to butter the inside of the pan. You could also use one of those non-stick vegetable sprays. So what I do is just melt a little bit of butter and then spread that on the bottom. And you only need to butter about maybe an inch up the sides of, if you're using a springform pan, like 2.5 centimeters. Because it's, as you probably saw at the beginning, it's pretty, it's not it's not like a cake. But I guess if we're doing it in a springform pan, you could call it a brownie cake. So once you do that, then what I like to do is take a round of parchment paper and just put that in the bottom. Just, you know, makes it easier to get it out of the pan, but you don't absolutely have to do that. So there. Now, I like to toast, we're going to add some nuts. I like to toast the nuts because I find it really brings out their flavor. So you will need 1 1/4 cups, which is 125 grams. I'm using pecans today, or pecans. You could use walnuts as well, or actually you could use hazelnuts or even almonds. And so what I do to toast them is to put them on a baking sheet, put them in the 350 Fahrenheit, 180 degrees Celsius oven for about 8 minutes, or until you start to smell them, and then take them out and let them cool and then coarsely chop. Now, as a little tip, if you bake a lot and you use toasted nuts a lot, what you might want to do, like when you're doing this, if you have a whole bag, toast the whole bag once, and then just take out what you need, and then the rest let them cool, and then put them in like either a plastic container or like a freezer bag, and then label the bag toasted, say pecans, and the date, and then you'll have your nuts already toasted for your next recipe. That's typically what I do. So I have 1 1/4 cups, 125 grams of chopped pecans. Really goes good with the chocolate. So now, this is just like any brownie recipe. We don't need our mixer. We're going to do it by hand. You will need a saucepan of simmering water and a heat-proof bowl. I like to use stainless steel. The first thing you will need is 3/4 cup, 170 grams of butter. You can use, like, as you know, if you watch the video, I like unsalted butter because I like to control the salt in the recipe. But if you have a favorite salted butter, use that. I just put it into cubes because then it'll melt faster. And then, of course, we need chocolate. I'm using 3 ounces, which is 85 grams. Now, you can use either a semi-sweet or a bittersweet chocolate. You want to coarsely chop it. Use a chocolate that you really just would eat it right out of the bowl. And just remember, whatever type of chocolate, bittersweet, semi-sweet, and the brand will affect how the brownie will taste. So, you know, if someone else makes it and it tastes a little different, it's probably because they used a different chocolate. So now I'm just going to put it over the saucepan and let them melt. Okay, so it's melted. Take it off the heat. Turn that off. Let's give it a good stir. Now, whenever you're melting chocolate, you want to take it off the heat as soon as it's melted. Don't let it sit there, because, you know, some people say, because I'm going to start adding my ingredients right away, and some people say, well, isn't it too hot? If I feel it it's warm, but it's not hot. And it shouldn't be if you take it off the heat right away. But if you did feel it and it's really hot, then let it cool down to warm. Just a little, because, you know, you don't want to burn your chocolate. Nobody wants to taste burnt chocolate. So now, we have the semi-sweet or bittersweet chocolate, but we're going to really bump up that flavor by adding 1/3 cup, 35 grams of unsweetened cocoa powder. Now you can use like the natural unsweetened, or I'm going to use, my preference is the Dutch process. So I'm just going to add that and whisk it in, along with 1 1/4, 250 grams of granulated white sugar. I know it's a lot of sugar, but we have that cocoa powder. And then if you used a bittersweet chocolate, you know, you need some sugar. And I'm also going to add 1 1/2 teaspoons, 6 grams of pure vanilla extract. Now, the vanilla is simply for flavoring, so if you don't want a vanilla flavor, you can leave that out. So just whisk that. Now you're going to see at this point, you are going to see some the granules of sugar. It's like a little rough looking. That's perfectly fine, because once you start adding your eggs, that'll smooth right out. So you will need 3 large eggs. That's 150 grams of eggs, and have them at room temperature. We're going to add one at a time, and then I should have said I'm using a wire whisk. Whisk that right in. You don't want it sitting. Don't let your eggs just sit on top and cook. So just add that, whisk it in. And the next one, as you can see, really easy to make. That's what, you know, it's nice to have some easy recipes. And then I'll add the last one. Now at this point we're going to whisk until this is going to smooth out and be nice and glossy. And you will notice as you're whisking, it's going to start getting a little harder to whisk. So that looks good. So as you can see, look at that. Nice and smooth, nice and glossy, shiny. So now we're going to add kind of a surprise ingredient, cream cheese. So what we're kind of having is, you know, if you've ever made a cream cheese brownie, which typically you have the brownie and then you have the cream cheese on top and you swirl it. Actually, I have a recipe. You can go either the joybaking.com website or the YouTube channel. But for this one, we're actually going to combine the two and put the cream cheese right into the brownie batter. So you will need 3 ounces, 85 grams full fat, regular cream cheese. Have your cream cheese at room temperature, kind of soft, and cut it into chunks. I'm just going to put that right in there. I did say at the beginning that these are rich, so small slices and a treat. Okay, so now I'm just going to whisk this in till, you know, you can see a few lumps of cream cheese. That's all right, but most of it is melted into the batter. That's good. So you can, hopefully you can see that there is little, you can see little chunks of the cream cheese. You know, it kind of cuts through, you know, a brownie is quite rich, and you add a little cream cheese, that tangy flavor really cuts through, and it really adds great flavor. So now we're going to add some flour. You will need 1/2 cup, 65 grams of all-purpose flour, plain flour. And if you use salted butter, leave this salt out. But if you used unsalted butter, add 1/4 teaspoon, 1 gram of salt. And I'm just going to stir that together. Put that in there. And I'll switch over to my spatula now. And then we're just going to fold in those nuts. Like I said, I'm using pecans, walnuts, hazelnuts, almonds, or really, if you wanted to leave them out and just have a really creamy, smooth brownie, you don't want the crunch of the nut, then you can leave them out or add chocolate chips or some dried fruit. I'll leave that up to you. Okay, there, that's it. So, move all this out of the way, and I'm just going to pour this right in here. Oh, smell the chocolate. Okay, and my spatula. Just spread that out, nice and even. And then I put my springform pan, or even if you're using a tart pan, put it on a larger baking sheet, just in case you get, any leaking, or it's just easier to transport your using the baking sheet. Excuse me. So now, everyone's oven is a little different. I do recommend getting a freestanding oven thermometer. That way you can double check your oven's calibration. So I'm going to say 30 to 35 minutes. The important thing is you don't want to overbake brownies, because then they're dry, and nobody wants a dry brownie. So what you're looking for, I know chocolate is a little hard to tell when it's done. There's a few things you can look for. One, you can take a wooden toothpick, insert it into the center. You shouldn't come out clean. You should get some batter clinging to the toothpick. But conversely, if you take a knife and insert it about 1 inch, 2.5 centimeters from the side of the pan, that will come out clean. So you can kind of got 2 ways there to double check to make sure your brownie is cooked perfectly. So I'm going to say 30 to 35 minutes. I do like to rotate my baking sheet front to back about halfway through baking, because usually you have some hot spots in your oven. So our brownie tart is done. Put your baking sheet on a wire rack, and I did take my knife and insert about 1 inch from the edge. It did come out clean. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to let it cool completely, and then when we come back, we will take it out of the pan and try a slice. So our brownie tart has cooled down to room temperature, so we're ready to take it out of the pan. So I just use like an offset spatula or a knife and just run it around the inside just to make sure it's not sticking. And then release the clamp. And the same as if you have a tart pan, remove the sides, and then you have that bottom plate. Oftentimes I just leave it like this and just cut through. But if you want to take that bottom plate off, say you're taking it somewhere, what you can do is you can either take a plate, turn it upside down, or I'm using one of these cake circles, 9-inch, 23 centimeter cake circles. You can just buy them online or cake decorating stores. I'm putting it like that, flip it, and then take that off and peel back. So, whoop. I'm going to slip that right under there like that. I don't want to use another cake circle. So now I'm going to cut it today. Normally, I find with a lot of chocolate desserts, they do benefit from being stored overnight. I find, like, especially for this one, the flavors kind of mingle and the chocolate softens. Plus, I think the texture improves. So that's my personal preference, would be to put this in the refrigerator overnight and then cut it the next day. Actually, the good part is you can store this in the refrigerator for up to a week, or you can even freeze it. So if you don't, options, right? So now, but we are going to cut it. And if your knife is dirty when it like has some crumbs on it, I mean, with any cake or tart, just wipe it off and you get more of a clean cut. Now, okay, I am going to cut a fairly large slice here to show you, but this is very rich. Very good, but very rich. So you might want to do like, I actually find half of this slice, and would be more than enough. Oh, see that? Oh, it's just gorgeous. I love brownies. Any brownie, just so. And then, you know, it's very nice just like that. You can sift some powder, or not powder, you could sift some powdered sugar, cocoa powder, finish it off. It is, I'm going to, a little bit of, I'm doing it like a plated dessert. If you had some company over and wanted to have a little whipped cream on there, you could do some vanilla ice cream. Actually, just a little side note. If you have a really good quality ice cream, vanilla ice cream, you let it melt, you have creme anglaise. So kind of a cheat creme anglaise. And well, we could do some extra pecans. And I think you could serve this very nice dinner party, or take it out to if you have to take a dessert to a party. So let's try a little. It's a great tasting brownie. Rich chocolate flavor. Now right now it's very soft because we just baked it. If you cover, like I said, cover and store it overnight, it firms up and it becomes almost like fudge, like candy, like chocolate bar almost. But either way, right now it's very soft. It's very creamy and smooth. And I like that little bit of crunch of the pecans, or just any nut, any particular nut that you like. I think it kind of offsets, adds a really nice flavor. Whipped cream. It's a great dessert. Try it. And until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of JoyBaking.com.